The neighborhood kids thought he was just the sweet old man who drove the ice cream truck and always had extra treats for those who couldn't afford them. But when predators came hunting for children, they learned that some protectors never really stopped protecting. Welcome to True Human Tales. Before we begin this powerful story of hidden guardianship and protective instincts, tell me in the comments from which city in the world are you watching today. And if you believe stories like this need to be heard, hit that subscribe button. These moments of quiet heroism deserve to be remembered. Maple Grove was the kind of suburban neighborhood where children still played outside until streetlights came on and parents knew each other by name. Tree-lined streets, well-maintained sidewalks, and community feel that seemed to belong to a different era. It was perfect for families and for the past 5 years, home to the most beloved ice cream truck in 3 counties. Eddie Martinez drove his cheerfully painted truck through Maple Grove's winding streets every afternoon from 3 p.m. to 7 p.m., playing classic carnival melodies that could be heard 3 blocks away. Children would drop their bikes and race inside to beg parents for dollar bills, then sprint back to join the crowd around Eddie's truck. He was 62 years old, with kind eyes, silver hair under a faded baseball cap, and the patient smile that made every child feel special. His truck was immaculate, painted in bright blues and yellows with hand-drawn cartoon characters dancing around the sides. But Eddie was more than just an ice cream vendor. He knew every child's name, remembered their favorites, and always seemed to have extras for kids whose families were struggling financially. When little Maria's mother lost her job, Eddie would slip her daughter free ice cream with a wink. "Don't tell the other kids, but you won a contest today." The neighborhood parents trusted Eddie completely. He'd been background checked by the city, bonded and licensed, with references that checked out perfectly. More importantly, he genuinely cared about the children he served. What the parents didn't know was that Eddie Martinez had spent 18 years as a Child Protection Services investigator, specializing in abduction and trafficking cases. What they didn't know was that he'd personally rescued over 200 children from predators, traffickers, and family abduction situations. What they didn't know was that the sweet ice cream man watching their children play had once been the investigator that criminals feared most. Eddie had retired from CPS 5 years ago after a case involving a trafficking ring that had shaken him to his core. 12 children rescued, but the trauma of what he'd seen had finally broken something inside him that wouldn't heal. His therapist had suggested finding work that involved children in positive circumstances, helping him remember why protecting innocence mattered. The ice cream truck had been perfect therapy. Every afternoon, Eddie was surrounded by laughter, joy, and the simple pleasure of childhood. It reminded him that most children lived safe, happy lives, and that his years of dark work had helped preserve that innocence for countless families. Friday afternoons started like every Friday for the past 5 years. Eddie loaded his truck at 2:30 p.m. from the wholesale supplier, checking inventory and ensuring everything was properly frozen. He performed his daily safety inspection, habits from his investigative days, where attention to detail meant the difference between success and tragedy. He began his route on Elm Street, where the kindergartners lived. Eddie's approach with the little ones was always gentle. He'd crouch down to their eye level, speak softly, and let them take their time deciding. "Mr. Eddie," called out 5-year-old Sophie Chen, running toward the truck with her 8-year-old brother Tommy. "Do you have the princess ones today?" "Of course I do, Princess," Eddie replied with a grandfatherly smile. "Can't disappoint my best customer, can I?" As Eddie handed Sophie her ice cream, he automatically scanned the surrounding area. Old habits. He noted parked vehicles, checked for adults who didn't belong, observed interaction patterns. 18 years of training didn't just disappear because you retired. By 4 p.m., Eddie had worked his way to Maple Street, where the school-aged children gathered. This was always his busiest stop. Sometimes 20 or 30 kids would surround the truck, chattering excitedly. Eddie loved this chaos, the sound of innocent laughter mixing with his truck's carnival music. He knew every child's story. Jessica Williams, whose father had deployed overseas, Marcus Thompson, who lived with his grandmother. The Rodriguez twins, who always shared a single ice cream because money was tight, thought Eddie usually accidentally gave them 2. But Maple Grove was different from his old cases. These children were loved, protected, living the childhood every kid deserved. Eddie's job here was simple: bring joy, create positive memories, and watch over them like a grandfather might. At 4:47 p.m., Eddie was parked outside Roosevelt Elementary as children walked home from after-school programs. The usual crowd had gathered, about 15 kids ranging from first grade through middle school, all chattering excitedly as they made selections. That's when Eddie noticed the van. Dark blue, tinted windows, parked across the street with engine running. Nothing inherently suspicious. Parents often waited in cars. But Eddie's trained eye caught details others would miss. The driver wasn't accompanying his child. The van's positioning gave clear view of children but blocked sightlines from houses. The license plate was obscured by deliberate mud splatter. Eddie continued serving ice cream while maintaining awareness of the van. 18 years of investigative training had developed his observation skills beyond normal capability. He could monitor potential threats while appearing focused on customer service. "Mr. Eddie, can I have a rocket pop?" asked 9-year-old Emma Foster. "Absolutely, sweetheart," Eddie replied, handing her the ice cream while keeping the van in peripheral vision. "How was school today?" As Emma chattered about her art project, Eddie noticed movement from the van. The driver had stepped out, middle-aged, average height, baseball cap pulled low. He moved with deliberate casualness, but Eddie recognized the body language. This wasn't a parent. This was someone hunting. The man approached the group with practiced friendliness, focusing on Sophie Chen, the 5-year-old who'd bought Princess ice cream earlier. Sophie was alone now. Her brother Tommy had gone inside to use the bathroom. "Hey there, little girl," the man said with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "That's a pretty backpack. I bet your mommy's looking for you." Eddie's blood went cold. Classic predator approach, false familiarity, manufactured urgency, separation from the group. Every instinct from 18 years of child protection cases screamed warnings. Eddie's transformation was immediate but invisible. To any observer, he was still the friendly ice cream man serving children. But inside, 18 years of training and protective instincts had activated with deadly precision. He moved closer to Sophie while continuing to serve other children, positioning himself within arm's reach of the little girl. His voice remained calm and grandfatherly, but his awareness expanded to take in every detail. "Sophie, honey, stay close to Mr. Eddie while your brother's inside," he said gently, then looked directly at the stranger. "Can I help you with something, sir?" The man's smile faltered slightly. He hadn't expected the ice cream vendor to engage. "Oh, no problem. Just thought this little one looked lost." "She's not lost," Eddie replied, his voice carrying an undertone of authority that made several children look up. "Sophie, why don't you go tell Tommy that Mr. Eddie has a special treat for both of you?" Sophie nodded and ran toward the school building, her instincts telling her something was wrong. Eddie watched her reach safety, then turned his full attention to the stranger. "Beautiful afternoon, isn't it?" Eddie said conversationally. "You have children in the area?" The man's body language shifted. Professional predators could sense when they'd encountered someone with training, and Eddie wasn't bothering to hide his alertness anymore. "Actually, I should get going." He turned and walked back toward the van, but Eddie was already moving. 18 years of experience had taught him to read predatory behavior, and everything about this man's approach screamed danger. Eddie quietly activated the emergency alert system in his truck, a direct line to local police dispatch. Then, he began clearing the area of children with calm efficiency. "Okay, everyone. Mr. Eddie needs to restock his freezer," he announced. "Ice cream break for 10 minutes, but I'll be right back." The children dispersed reluctantly, most heading home or back into the school. Eddie watched until the last child was safely inside the building, then focused on the van. The van was moving now, slowly circling the block. Eddie recognized the pattern. The driver was waiting for children to separate from the group, looking for isolated targets. This wasn't random opportunity. This was methodical hunting behavior. Eddie's emergency alert had brought an immediate response from Detective Lisa Santos, his former colleague who'd transitioned to local police after working CPS cases. Her voice crackled through his radio system. "Eddie, this is Santos. What's your situation?" "Possible predator, dark blue van, license partially obscured, circling Roosevelt Elementary. Single adult male, 40s, targeting a 5-year-old girl. Pattern suggests experienced abductor." "Copy that. Units responding, ETA 4 minutes. Can you maintain visual?" Eddie was already in motion. He'd closed his truck and was following the van in his personal vehicle, an unmarked sedan he kept equipped with tactical supplies from his investigative days, old habits and hard-learned lessons. The van had stopped again, this time near the playground, where several children were playing while parents chatted on benches. Eddie watched the driver exit and approach a group of elementary school kids with the same false familiarity he'd used on Sophie. Eddie couldn't wait for backup. Children were in immediate danger from someone who'd clearly done this before. He activated his emergency equipment and stepped out of his car. "Police! Step away from the children!" Eddie's command voice carried across the playground with authority that froze everyone in place. The man spun around, saw Eddie approaching, and ran. But Eddie had been chasing predators for 18 years, and he'd never lost one yet. The chase lasted 3 blocks through Maple Grove's residential streets. The predator was younger and faster, but Eddie had something more valuable: intimate knowledge of how child abductors thought and moved when cornered. Eddie used his radio to coordinate with responding units, directing them to intercept points while maintaining pursuit. This wasn't his first foot chase, and muscle memory from hundreds of similar situations guided his movements. The man tried to lose Eddie by cutting through backyards and jumping fences, but Eddie anticipated every move. Child predators followed predictable patterns when fleeing. They sought isolated areas, avoided main streets, and always moved toward transportation or hiding spots they'd pre-selected. Eddie cornered him in an alley behind the community center, where the man finally turned to fight. He was carrying zip ties, duct tape, and a taser, clear evidence of premeditation. But he'd made the mistake of targeting children in a neighborhood protected by someone who'd devoted his life to stopping people exactly like him. The confrontation was brief and one-sided. Eddie's defensive tactics training from his CPS days had been reinforced by years of dealing with violent suspects. The predator was secured with his own zip ties before backup arrived. Detective Santos was first on scene, finding Eddie calmly holding the suspect while reading him his rights. She stared at her former colleague with familiar amazement. "Eddie Martinez, Child Protection Services. I should have known you'd end up somewhere like this." Eddie looked at the children who were now safely behind police tape, their parents holding them close. "Someone has to watch out for them, Lisa. These kids deserve to grow up safe." The predator's identity sent shockwaves through law enforcement. Marcus Webb, wanted in 3 states for child abduction, with a pattern of targeting suburban neighborhoods during after-school hours. The FBI had been tracking him for 8 months without success. Special Agent Jennifer Walsh reviewed Webb's arrest with amazement. "Mr. Martinez, your identification and response probably prevented multiple abductions. This suspect had detailed surveillance photos of at least 12 children in this neighborhood." Eddie studied the evidence photos with professional eyes. He'd been planning this for weeks. The ice cream truck route made him think the area was unprotected. "Why didn't you tell the neighborhood about your background? Parents would have felt safer knowing a former CPS investigator was watching their children." Eddie looked out the police station window toward Maple Grove, where parents were holding their children closer tonight. "Because I wanted them to trust the ice cream man, not fear the investigator. Kids deserve to feel safe and happy." The investigation revealed that Webb had specifically chosen Maple Grove because his research suggested it was a typical suburban neighborhood with standard security measures. He'd observed Eddie's ice cream truck for weeks, categorizing him as a non-threat. Webb had severely miscalculated. 3 days later, Eddie returned to his ice cream truck route. The neighborhood felt different now. Parents were more watchful, children stayed closer to home, and the easy trust that had characterized Maple Grove had been shaken. But when Eddie's carnival music began playing on Elm Street, children still came running. Sophie Chen was first in line, accompanied by both parents and her brother, Tommy. "Mr. Eddie," she called out, just like always. "Do you have princess ice cream today?" Eddie knelt down to her level, his voice gentle and reassuring. "Of course I do, princess. And you know what? I'll always have princess ice cream for you." Sophie's father approached hesitantly. "Mr. Martinez, we don't know how to thank you. The police told us what you used to do." Eddie stood up, shaking his head. "I'm just the ice cream man, sir. I'm here to make sure kids like Sophie can enjoy being kids." As the afternoon progressed, more parents approached Eddie with gratitude and questions. The story had spread through the neighborhood. Their beloved ice cream vendor was a retired hero who'd spent nearly 2 decades rescuing children. But Eddie noticed something else. The children still saw him the same way. To them, he wasn't a former investigator or a hero. He was just Mr. Eddie, the nice man who brought ice cream and remembered everyone's favorite flavors. That's exactly how he wanted it. Eddie Martinez continued driving his ice cream truck through Maple Grove for 2 more years before retiring completely at age 65. The neighborhood never forgot what he'd done, but more importantly, they never forgot who he was. A man who dedicated his life to protecting children's innocence and joy. The ice cream truck route was eventually taken over by Eddie's nephew, who'd learned from his uncle that bringing happiness to children was its own form of protection. But parents still told stories about Mr. Eddie, the ice cream man who'd kept their neighborhood safe. Sometimes heroes don't wear badges or uniforms. Sometimes they drive cheerfully painted trucks and play carnival music, bringing joy instead of fear. But when evil comes hunting for innocence, some protectors reveal that their greatest strength was never the authority they carried. It was the love they had for the children they served. Eddie Martinez had tried to retire from child protection, but when predators threatened the kids he'd grown to love like grandchildren, he remembered that some callings never really end. They just find new ways to serve. That's the most important protection of all. So now I ask you, have you ever met someone like Eddie? Someone who seemed like just a kind neighbor until the moment they revealed the depths of their dedication to protecting others? Someone whose gentle presence made children feel safer without them ever knowing why? Tell me in the comments, where are you watching from today, and share their story with us. And if you believe stories like this need to be heard, hit that subscribe button and help us make sure they are. We publish human stories that matter every single week. Thank you for watching. We'll see you in the next story. And remember, sometimes the person bringing joy and ice cream to your neighborhood is exactly who you need when danger comes looking for the innocent.